Hey guys, this is Ronald speaking, and in this video I'm going to show you 10 cool and useful tricks in Maya. Okay, the first one is one of my favorites, is the ability to quickly place stuff in your scene. Just by pressing Shift+D, I'm able to duplicate an object, and then I can just rotate it, do some transforms on it, and then I can press Shift+D a few more times. Right, you can see this is creates a nice little cool shape over here. So what exactly is this command? It can be found on this menu here, I think under edit, duplicate with transform, right? So it is quite obscure function, like it's not obvious what it does, because if you press Shift+D, it just duplicates an object, right? But then what does it do? What's the width transform part, right? So the width transform part is the fact that you can rotate it, you can move it, and you can scale it. And it will kind of remember, the next time you press Shift+D, it will apply the transformations from your previous object to your new object onto the next object, if that makes sense. So what happens is, once you have done this, you press Shift+D, it kind of does that, see? Okay, what is this useful for? You can place stuff in your scene very easily, like you can Shift+D, you can rotate it a little bit, and you can flatten it out, and then you can press a few more times, and you can place some stuff over here. You can press Shift+D, move it over, rotate it a little bit, and say scale it down all by a little bit, and you can press Shift+D, and you can populate a scene, something like this. Yep, and then you can get a scene of random objects, or you can do this and go just run with it. Or you can use this as a modeling tool also. I believe maybe we can make a chain, right? So I've never done this, but let me try. If I change this subdivisions to an odd number, and then I turn on my symmetry on the x-axis, and I'm able to make a chain of sorts. Then I'm able to, wait, hang on, let me turn off my symmetry. Then I'm able to duplicate this, Shift+D again, rotate this by 90 degrees, move it over here, and press Shift+D a bunch of times, right? So you can see you can get a chain like this. Yeah, it kind of works. Yeah, okay, so that's the first cool trick in Maya. So the next tip is the ability to access one of the menus that you often access over here by just middle mousing on the main menu item here. So for example, if I were to always access my animation editor, graph editor, it's kind of annoying, right? So let's say, let me undock my graph editor, right? So let's say I've done my animation, I closed it. The next time I want to open it, I have to go to Windows, Animation Editor, Graph Editor, right? So it can be kind of annoying. Of course, you can set a hotkey, but if you don't want to, the next time you want to use it, Maya actually remembers the last access item from that mega menu, right? So you can actually just go here, middle mouse, Windows, boop, and the graph editor opens. Yeah, how cool is that? Yeah, so I often use this for some of the tools in my studio. For example, this one of these rendering tools, right? The next time I want to use it, I just middle mouse masonry, and it comes out over here. Right. So that's that. Okay, the next one is you can add expressions directly in your attribute editor, right? So the kind of like traditional way to add expressions is on your channel box. Not traditional, but one of the more known ways. It's on your rotate Y channel over here. You can click on edit, expressions, and then the expression editor will open. You can copy this channel over here, and you can equate that to the frame and put a semicolon and press create, right? And then you just written an expression to rotate this, right? So it can be kind of cumbersome to manage this, especially if you have closed it. You go to edit, expressions, and then it's possible to manage it this way, but there's another way to manage this. Is if I break it in your attribute editor, you can also do that without pressing the expression editor and stuff like that. You can go to here, rotate Y, you can just press equals to frame, and there you have it. So this is much simpler, and you can delete the expression like this, or you can equals to sine frame, for example. So it does this, and then you can edit the expression and the same menu comes out, and you can make some fixes over here, right? So this is quite convenient. The next one is having multiple attribute editors. You know, sometimes when you want to reference the values over here to copy to another attribute editor, like then you have to click between two objects, right? Let's just say I've created two new objects over here, and I just want to reference the values of this guy and type some values over here, right? Let's say this is 5, 5, 5, 8, 5.5, and 3.2 is some difficult number to remember, right? And let's say we actually want to reference the values over here. We can press this button here, copy tab, right? Once you press this, it will create another attribute editor, but this attribute editor that is docked into your main UI is context sensitive, so whatever object you select, it will change, right? However, the one that you copied out will kind of stay fixated onto the object that you last selected, right? And this is good because then you can reference the values from the other objects. Another use case is sometimes the UI can be fiddly in Maya, like you want to drag and drop something, but you want to have that context, have the attribute editor open and select one of the objects to drag it in, right? It happens very often for mesh, right, over here. So let's create a mesh network, or any kind of a fiddly UI that you want to drop some objects into here. But if you select the box to drop it into this menu over here, right, and then you select the box and then the menu is gone, so that can be quite annoying. So you can go to the repro here and then press copy tab, right? So this stays fixated. If you select the box, it won't run away, it won't change the menu, and then you can middle mouse from the viewport, from the outliner, and drop it inside here, right? So that's a very useful case. I find myself struggle with the UI a little bit, right? So next is let me just clear up my scene a little bit. Boom, 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 boom. New file. How about that? So there's this thing in Maya that is quite kung fu-ish, if I would say. Is that if you use the move tool, it can be quite difficult to select the gizmo sometimes if the gizmo is small or if you have a bunch of other objects in your scene, right? So let me just make some objects to occlude and disrupt my ability to select stuff. So if I want to actually move an object in a particular axis, it's time consuming to aim for these gizmos sometimes, right? So there is a shortcut to this. Without any of the axes selected, right, you can hold shift and middle mouse in your viewport in empty space the direction you want. For example, if I want to move it down this Z axis, I'll just hold shift and middle mouse in the empty space like this. So this is kind of difficult to explain, but it does save a lot of time if you have a bunch of stuff in a scene like that. Let's say this, let's really get out of the way, you know. You don't have to. Basically it's a very small thing, but you can save quite a bit of like problems trying to select the axis you need, right? Because this empty space is usually a lot, right? You can do this, you can do this, you can move up, you can move down, you can move. Yeah, but the trick here is you gotta kind of tumble your camera a little bit, like oh, I want to move it there, right? Then you can move it there, right? Yeah, so that is middle mouse moving stuff, and I think it also applies to the graph editor. So let's just try. Let's say we open the graph editor over here. Let me just dock it because I usually have it docked. Wow, just a few objects is too much for Maya. Okay, so we are back in Maya, and let's to show that middle mousing and dragging in empty space also works in the graph editor. So let's try this. I'm gonna set a keyframe here, and I'm gonna set a keyframe over here, right? So with that, I have an animation here. So if I want to move the keys over here, I can just press W and just hold shift and just move it like this in the empty space. You see, my cursor is over here, my keyframe is over here, but I don't have to middle mouse over here to try to move it, right? I can just move it like this here. See, you have a lot of space to use, right? I see far too often people try to like go, I want to move this key, right? So the idea is once you have stuff selected, right, you can move them wherever you want. For example, this tangent here, if I change the weighted tangent, I can select this, and I don't have to middle mouse on this guy, right? I can just middle mouse here, right? So it's the same idea. I don't have to click on this gizmo and move it up here. I can just hold shift, right? Even with no axis selected, for example, I'll select all three axes in the center here, and I'll just blue one, the red one. Oh, that was a miss. So it can be fiddly at times, but mostly it will save you a lot of time. So next up is repeat last command. The keyboard shortcut is G. There are two ways that Maya tools function. One is a tool and the other one is a function. So as long as you run a function, you can run it again by pressing G, right? So let me just demonstrate that. If I had a cube here, and then I select this edge here, and I use the function to edge ring and split, right? So I managed to split down the middle line here. I can select this edge and then press G again to run that command again, run that function again, right? See? So I can add a lot of edge loops like this, right? Without ever having to access that menu again, right? Or if I were to, well, maybe let me subdivide this and say I select this bunch of faces and I use the circularize function here, right? And I wanna use that function again for this bunch of faces here. I can just press G, right? See? If I increase this, I can just press G. Yeah, I can just press G. G, and select this, press G. Select this stuff, press G. Select this stuff, press G, right? I think you get the idea. You can repeat the last command very easily by pressing G, right? So to speed up your workflow, you notice yourself pressing the same button over and over again, running the same command like over 20 times, just moving your mouse going up and down the shelf, then it's probably the time that you get used to running the function, do some manipulation, do some moving and stuff like that. So it doesn't actually remember your transformations if you move stuff or stuff like that. It remembers the function, right? So if I press G now, it will still work because the last command that I ran was this, right? All these viewport manipulation and transformations of components, these aren't commands, these aren't functions, right? Okay, so I think I'm done with this one. And the next one is one of my favorites, is the content browser and the ability to now remesh in Maya 2022, and it gives some quite decent results. So let's have a look at that. Under the polygon menu here, poly modeling menu, there's this new button over here. Previously it's always been there, it's just that you had to go to Windows General Editors and the content browser, just in case you're using an older version of Maya. And it provides not the some of the designs of the meshes can be quite strange. In any case, they serve as very good test objects if you want to test the scene, right? So recently I had to test one of the shaders, and it was I wanted to test it on a weapon. So I didn't have a weapon, so I dropped down an assault rifle, I dropped down a Space Marine rifle, a rocket launcher, and a gun, right, a handgun. And then I could use like this rocket launcher as a base for something. So if I center the pivot, rotate this over here, you see I can piece together and kit bash some stuff together like this, you know. Just move it down. Maybe it's I want something cute, right? And then I can use my Space Marine gun over here. So I use my assault rifle as the base, and use the Space Marine gun here, and I can steal some objects. Let's say I still have a handgun somewhere, right? Okay. Anyhow, let's say I want to introduce the butt of the rifle over here, so I can scale this up. You see, I can kind of like I wouldn't say very properly design a weapon here, right? But it can look like something if you wanna quickly prototype something. And there's the pistol I was looking for over here. If you needed to say give it some kind of like a you know, those kind of like machine guns and their rounds, right? You can do that by placing its pivot a bit lower here, and just Shift+D and just do some transformations and Shift+D, right? It can look like a bunch of rounds that is ready to shot some stuff, right? Obviously it wouldn't hold up for any kind of close-ups, but for just general quick testing, you need a prop, you need a placeholder, right? This kind of stuff really works quite well. Right, so let me just scale this in. It can look at kind of like a weapon. Right. Okay, so I think that's all I want to show you for using stuff in the content browser. You can quickly mock up some stuff, and then the remeshing, right? So the remeshing, I find that, you know, oftentimes we will use Maya to do some cartoony characters, right? And then every time we want to model we don't want to model the fingers from scratch all the time, right? So there's a quick way to get some cartoony hands by also utilizing the content browser. So if I go to bipeds and click on human body, so this is a human hand that looks very human hand, right? But I can technically throw the bunch of it away and select all these verts here and go to average vertices and average them out like this. So you see, I can get like alien hands like this. Okay, so actually that's not what I wanted to show you, but you can move stuff along the normals, right? So every normal is a point normal facing outwards from the mesh, right? We can access that by holding W, left click, and go to axis and navigate to normal. Okay, once we have done that, we can look for the axis that says N. It draws a general average axis of all the points in the scene, I think. But just know that it's a representation of every point's normal, and we can middle mouse that normal axis and just move stuff along its normal, and we can get something chubby like this, right? And after that, we just remember to hold W and shift back to the world or the object mode for your transformations. And I can then shift right click and average verts just to bring some sanity to the overlapping, right? See, I can get kind of like a cartoony hand without too much work, right? And again, I can attach this to the character I want, right? Yeah. Okay. Oh, the thumb is really big. Yeah, but you can do things. You can do it to taste. For example, you can move along normals for these 4 other fingers a little bit more. Just note that it is supposed to work on the vertices and not the face normals. Actually, I haven't tried the face normal, so that might work too. You can just give it a try. Let's just give it a try now, right? How about that? The faces, axis, normals. No, there's no gizmo when you do that, so it has to be the points. Vertices, I mean. Okay, so let me average them. I can average these guys out a little bit more. Okay, so these are my cartoony hands. Okay, so let's say then the other one is the fact that I can remesh stuff and not care so much about topology when I'm modeling at the start, right? Okay, so if I were to create a cylinder as a representation of my arm, so let's say I have my cylinder over here, just assign them both to the human body material. Let's just say I want to piece them together like this, right? But then I can't be bothered with the topology and stuff like that, so it's entirely possible to just do a general matching of these two. Right, like this. And then I can select this guy and do a boolean, right? So traditionally the boolean is generates some very bad topology, but we have a remesh now, so don't worry. Let's see how well this thing performs. The last I tried, it performed quite well. Boolean and union, right? So this has been boolean together. I made a mistake here, but that's fine. Let me press the remesh button over here. Remesh over here. So let's press that button. Okay, and then I think I can then re-topologize this remesh. Right, so if I have a kink over here, I can use one of the sculpting tools. Sculpting, and just press one of these guys. Make my brush size smaller, hold shift and just smooth this guy out. Right, smooth this guy out. Whee. And when I'm done, I can then retopologize this by going to Mesh and retopologize. And let Maya do its work. Ta-da! Look at that! So this is a pretty decent topology if you ask me, for little to no work. Yeah, so this is I find it's kind of powerful. For simple characters that you don't need the wrist bone and stuff like that. It's much more accessible now, I think, compared to the past, right? Just put some shapes together. You can use the sculpting tools to smooth something out, and then you can remesh and retopo. Okay, so the next tip number 8, is I hope this video is not running too long. It's the fact that you can, sometimes in the attribute editor, sorry, in the channel box over here, if we want to rotate Z, we can select this channel and middle mouse in the viewport, right? Or we can click inside here and left click inside there and just drag it. But sometimes we want even more minute control. We can actually hold control and click and drag there. Hold control for more control, right? So if you notice, I'm going to left click now without my holding control. It's going to jump a whole unit of 1, right? But if I hold control, you will see that it jumps by 0.1, right? And if you need more movement, you can hold shift or shift control. Yeah, I think it actually goes faster. Yeah, it definitely goes faster. Yeah. So if you click, it's of a normal speed. If you hold control, it's you need minute control. You hold shift, you can go further and faster. If you hold alternate, nothing happens, right? So it's a control and shift, and you can do the same for any channel, and you can do something similar also in the attribute editor, right? So in the attribute editor over here, this rotate Z, except that the Kung Fu is different here, right? If I were to need to change any of the values here, I will have to hold control, right? But this then doesn't give me more control. This is just default moving the values with left click, right? So the trick here is from left to right. Your left mouse button is slow, your middle mouse button is medium, your right mouse button is fast, I think. Let me try. I haven't tried this in a long while. So if I hold control and click in here, it's fine. If I hold control and middle mouse in here, it's faster. If I hold control and right click in here, it's fastest, right? So you can do that also in the attribute editor. Okay, so slow, medium, fast, right? I drag roughly the same length and they move at very different magnitudes. Okay, so that's it. Varying speeds in the channel box and attribute editor. And then tip number 9. What is this? All right. So when you have a lot of history on your stuff, let me just add a few more edge loops over here, and then try to average some stuff out over here. And then okay, so let's say when I'm done with all my modeling operations, you will see that there's a lot of history over here, right? So this is not very long stack of history, but it could be more. What's the best way to create a lot of history, right? So people who don't delete history, you will see a long stack of this, and then sometimes the history is needed, most of the time it's not needed. But I see a lot of people coming here and just clicking on this little arrow here to jump to their material, because the material on this attribute stack is usually the last one, right? So if you want to edit a material, sometimes they end up doing this, clicking all the way to the last one and click on this, right? So the trick I want to say is probably very underwhelming for some, is the fact that you can actually right click here and you can just jump to the material, and you can right click here and then just jump to the first object here, right? You don't actually have to click this multiple times to get to the last on the menu. Okay, so that's tip number 9. And then tip number 10 is the fact that you can actually write some mel commands and just drag and drop to the shelf, right? So let me show you what I mean. If I were to create a cube over here and I'll create a torus. So if I were to click on this button at the bottom right corner called the script editor. So if I were to create a cube and create a torus, you would see that in the history, in the script editor's history over here, there's actually polycube function, which I can copy and paste here, and a polytorus function, which I can copy and paste here. So this is interesting because I can then run this command by selecting it and pressing Ctrl Enter, and then I can run this command. So every time I need this, I can press Ctrl Enter, right? So what's the point of this? This is because if it's something that you often want to use, that you often want to create these two objects at once, you can copy. You can, without learning any coding, you can copy what was written by Maya, paste the relevant stuff over here, and then just run it as a command. And what's even cooler is you can go to your custom menu over here and just middle mouse this over here, right? And then you can edit this and call this my cube torus, right? Then just save all shells, right? So the next time I wanna, I'm gonna start cube torus, so I can press this, and that happens, right? Or it could be the case that so who creates a cube and a torus, right? So let's say you all often want to have a test object and it's too slow for you, right, to open the content browser. It takes a while to load, a few seconds, and then your favorite testing object, for example, is the T-Rex, right? And then you bring the T-Rex in, and then you kind of wanna, let's say you want a more decent testing scale. It's 0.1, right? And then you freeze transform, delete history, center pivot, and then you set its material to Lambert 1, right? So I've did a bunch of functions to get my T-Rex to this state, right? And it's all recorded here, right? So we can see here, from the time we open the content browser, we probably don't need to do that, but we can copy this command, the file import, which imports the T-Rex. We can set the T-Rex scale to 0.1. We can, with the T-Rex selected, we can freeze transform, delete history, and center pivot. Right, so I select clear, select the T-Rex, and freeze transforms, delete history, and center pivot. And then we can, with the object selected also, we set its initial shading group to Lambert 1. Right, so these are the functions, right? So if I delete this T-Rex now and I run this command, boom, my T-Rex comes in like this, right? So I can then go to my custom shelf over here and then say put here, and then just edit and call this test T-Rex test. Right, save all shelves, and there we have it. So the next time you're like, oh, I need a test object, right, to test my lighting or some materials, I can press this button, boom, and it's of a decent scale here. You can drop your material and test it. Yeah, so that is it. And yeah, I'm on number 10. So those are 10 cool and I think quite useful tricks in Maya that I guess what I want to address is that these tips are quite obscure, and it just comes with using Maya for a little while, and maybe some of it you already know. That's fine, right? And if you have more tips for me, then you can let me know also, because I might be doing stuff in very old school ways, right? I'm a very old user of Maya, so I might be doing things very old school. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, thanks, bye. Hey guys, so I realized that I don't have a proper outro for my videos, and I've been preparing some resources for CG artists over the years, Houdini and Maya predominantly, and I've posted them on my Instagram, right? You can see over here. And this was one of the shaders that I was testing, and then this is the kind of like a behind the scenes setup, and I list over here like the ways to achieve some of these setups over here in Houdini. Yeah, so there are this kind of short form content that's available on my Instagram, and so that's where you can kind of check it out if it's helpful, and also some of the art stuff over here. And my website, ronald-fong.com, you can check out some of my work, but more importantly, which pertains more to the fellow artists out there, I got the iridescent glass material that I was testing in Redshift in Maya. Kind of like the setup of it is over here. So I detailed out what I did to achieve a shader like this, and also a screenshot of the shader graph if you would like to have a look and have a go at it, and other stuff like this, right? So you can check out my blog over here. That's ronald-fong.com/blog, right? So yeah, I hope this is kind of like a closing that will help, and the 10 cool tricks in Maya, right? The familiar title here, I'm still working on the post. So there's one more resource that I have, which is I think where you're watching this from, on my YouTube channel, right? In case it's not obvious. So here on YouTube, I do some longer form tutorials that don't necessarily fit the format of Instagram. This 3D model of a basketball in Houdini, and I detail out the steps that I use to achieve something like this, so you can follow along if you want to learn something like that. Yeah, so a bunch of resources of various lengths and formats for on the various platforms. Take your pick, and I'll see you in the next video. Right? See you, bye.